Good afternoon. Today I'm going to be reviewing the San Martin SN0111-G-A. This watch is available from skbwatches.com for €204. You can use the discount code WR4K15 to get €15 discount off any watch over €100 on skbwatches.com. So if you use the WR4K15 discount code, that will reduce the price of this piece from €204 down to €189 respectively. So firstly, let's look at the box that the watch comes in, and then I'll talk you through the specifications of the piece. So the watch comes in this black plastic pelican style case. One undoes the 4 clips securing the hinge lid to the base, and I'll show you the interior. So as you can see, inside we have 2 foam protective panels, one beneath the hinge lid and a second foam protective panel in the base. The 2 foam protective panels do a good job of protecting the watch in shipping from any damage. Although basic, this black plastic pelican style case does suffice. It's very aesthetically pleasing, and it's not as good as the hard shell travel cases that San Martin are using on other pieces, but however, they've put everything into the quality of the watch itself rather than the packaging with this piece, and I think it is acceptable. So with regards to the items that come with the piece, this is the owner's instruction manual, clear concise diagrams. The instructions are in English and it details the operation of the movement used, which is the Seiko Caliber NH35A automatic. This is the plastic warranty card. On the reverse, it's filled in with the date of purchase, the reference number of the piece, and it's stamped by the dealer stamp San Martin Watch Company. I'm pleased to report that this piece, the SN0111-G-A, is covered by a 2-year international warranty. And I want to give due credit to San Martin here, because often low-tier Chinese watch brands only cover their watches with 12 months international warranty, but San Martin cover their watches with a 2-year international warranty, which is very good at this low-tier price point of only €189. One also gets this San Martin branded plastic tag. As you can see, we have the San Martin hex emblem and San Martin text logo on both sides of the plastic tag. And one also gets this stainless steel 1.6mm flathead jeweler screwdriver, nailed shank, nice chamfer to the end of it so it's not sharp edged, and this is solid 316L grade stainless steel. It's not made from mild steel, which is nickel plated to give the appearance of stainless steel, and San Martin deserve credit because this is very well machined. The nailed shank is very grippy and tactile, and the tip is precision ground to 1.6mm, and it is the correct size for resizing the screw pins in the oyster style bracelet. So nice to get that included. And lastly, one also gets this solid 316L grade stainless steel spring bar tool, 2-prong fork at one end, and we have a push pin at the other end. And again, this is made from solid stainless steel. It's not made from mild steel, which has been nickel plated to give the appearance of stainless steel. Nailed shank, and it is machined to a very good standard. The end of it with the push pin is precision ground, and the 2-prong fork is also precision ground, entirely made from 316L grade stainless steel. It is a high quality spring bar tool, and it does suffice if you want to exchange the bracelet for a strap, so good to get that included. So good presentation, good accessories, and good to get a 2-year international warranty versus 12 months international warranty as per so many low tier Chinese brands. So with regards to the specifications of the piece, the SN0111-G-A is clearly an homage to the Rolex Submariner date. However, there are some notable differences. It's not a direct clone or copy of the Submariner date, because you can see there is no Cyclops magnifier above the date complication, and also the ceramic bezel insert is different because we don't just have 15-minute ticks in the first quarter. The larger minute ticks are around to 20, and then we have smaller minute ticks around the bezel as per a Rolex Mills sub bezel. The other notable difference is it doesn't have a flat sapphire crystal, it has a double dome sapphire crystal. So San Martin have got the balance correct, because this is an homage to the Submariner rather than a direct clone or copy of it, and I like the notable differences as I've detailed. So with regards to the specification, we have a 40mm case diameter. We have a lug-to-lug measurement of 47.6mm, a thickness of 13.4mm, and a lug width of 20mm. The oyster-style bracelet tapers from 20mm at the lugs down to 16mm at the 2-button push micro-adjustment clasp. The micro-adjustment clasp is signed to a high standard with an embossed San Martin hex emblem, mirror-polished San Martin logo inside the hex, and a matte bee-blasted background to it, and also it has mirror-polished edges to the hex, which is applied, as you can see, nice 3D effect to it, and it is finished to perfection. Beautiful luster to the body, which is longitudinal, and I like the satin finishing. That complements the longitudinal brush satin finishing to the flanks. 2 flat head screws on the left and the right hand flank for the micro adjustment mechanism, and they're slightly recessed so they don't stick proud from the flanks, and therefore they've been deburred and chamfered very well. Nice large mirror polished bevel which marks the transition between the edge of the body and the flanks. No sharp edge to the undercut to the flanks, doesn't have sharp corners, and the top edge and low edge of the micro adjustment clasp has been deburred and chamfered to a very good standard, so very high quality finishing to the micro adjustment clasp. So as I've detailed, this piece uses a double domed sapphire crystal versus a flat sapphire crystal, and San Martin deserve credit here because they've made the correct decision by not using a boxed top hat crystal as per so many low tier Chinese brands, because that would add 2mm of thickness to the piece. By using a very low profile double domed sapphire crystal, it keeps the thickness of this piece down to only 13.4, which is good for an H35A powered piece. The crystal has clear AR coating on the underside, and the clear anti-reflective coating does an outstanding job of reducing the glare and the highly reflective nature of the silver mirror polished applied indices and silver mirror polished Mercedes handset, as well as the silver San Martin hex emblem which is applied at 12 o'clock. Glossy black enamel dial is reflective, but the AR coating works very well. So although it is a shiny dial versus matte or textured or alternatively a sunburst dial, the glossy black enamel dial adds depth to it. The legibility and clarity is enhanced. The date complication at 3 is correctly proportioned. The black Arabic numerals contrast very well with the white date wheel, and the size of the framing of the date window around the date is correct. Both the single and double Arabic numerals are clearly legible, and also the alignment is correct. They're not too far to the left or the right of the date window, and they're not too high or too low. So they've got the proportions of the applied indices correct. They look very similar to the Rolex Maxi dial layout, and I think the proportions of the Mercedes hands are also correct. The pencil minute hand extends all the way to the white minute ticks on the chapter ring. The Mercedes hour hand also looks correctly proportioned, and the second hand extends all the way to the minute ticks on the chapter ring, and everything about it looks correct. The white minute ticks on the chapter ring are printed with high definition crisp white paint on the glossy black enamel dial, so the contrast of the chapter ring with the white minute ticks is good against the glossy enamel black dial. Also, just the right amount of information. Often low tier Chinese brands have a tendency to overbrand the dial with unnecessary text and specification, but San Martin have got it correct. It looks balanced because at 12 o'clock we simply have the applied San Martin hex emblem, and then at the 6 o'clock position we have 2 lines of text, automatic and 300m equals 990 feet. Just the right amount of information for a dive piece, automatic and the water resistance rating. One doesn't need any additional information to clutter the dial and make it look too busy. So symmetry of the dial is good, and the white dates complication at 3 balances the 9 o'clock index at 9 o'clock. So it works very well. I like the symmetry of the dial. This is also available in a no date version, and it's also available with a mill sub style sword hand version, but I think this date complication version with the Mercedes hands looks very good. With regards to the bezel, it's solid 316L grade stainless steel, scalloped teeth, matte satin finish to the scalloped teeth, and the actual scallops themselves are mirror polished to a flawless standard. Nice large bevel chamfer to the top edge of the scalloped teeth, and that deletes the sharp tips of the teeth. So it does feel grippy and tactile, but however it doesn't feel sharp. The tips of the scalloped teeth do not dig into the index finger and thumb when you rotate it, so you can get good purchase on it, but it doesn't feel sharp, doesn't cut the fingertip or the thumb, so it's perfect. Quality of the finishing is excellent. The profiling to the scallops is very good. It does look visually very similar to a Rolex Submariner scalloped bezel, and I really like it. With regards to the case, it's solid 316L grade stainless steel, brush satin finish to the tops of the lugs, and that complements the longitudinal brush satin finishing to the flanks. Nice large mirror polished bevels which mark the transition between the top edge of the lugs and the flanks. Quality of the brush satin finishing to the flanks and the top of the case is perfection. Nice fine grained finish to the satin finishing, beautiful luster to it, no imperfections whatsoever. This is something that San Martin do very well. What we're looking at here is high tier level brush satin finishing on a low tier piece. So to clarify, low tier is €0 to €500 price point, mid tier is €500 to €5,000 price point, high tier is €10,000 plus. So the brush satin finishing on this piece, on the case, is high tier level. We're looking at €10,000 plus price point finishing to the tops of the lugs, the mirror polished bevels, which mark the transition, and also the brushed satin finishing to the flanks. Now, some San Martin pieces have the common problem of a sharp undercut to the flanks. Often collectors report that the undercuts to the left and the right hand flanks have sharp edges and they dig into the wrist or they scratch the wrist. However, I'm pleased to report that this piece does not have that negative. The undercuts to the flanks, both on the left and the right hand side, have been deburred and chamfered very well. This is an area that San Martin watches were known for having sharp edges. They were very sharp and crisp, sometimes too sharp, but they have refined this piece. It's got a larger bevel on the edge, or one could say a chamfer to the edge, and that has deleted the sharp edge. So the four corners are deburred and chamfered very well. The tips of the lugs do not have sharp corners, and the undercuts have a nice large chamfer that deletes the sharp edge. Let's look at the bracelet in detail. So female pivoted end links are the correct choice. What we're looking at with this piece is peak San Martin, the very best of San Martin, because everything about this is refined. If I had to choose one word to describe the SN0111-G-A, it would be refinement. Female pivoted end links are the correct choice rather than using male end links. This does have a very good lug to lug measurement of 47.6. It's just 0.4mm below the perfect sweet spot of 48, which I often refer to in my reviews. So the benefits of using female pivoted end links versus male end links, as per a Rolex Submariner, which this is a homage to, or Submariner date. This reduces the effective lug to lug because the female pivoted end links allow the end link in the oyster style bracelet to articulate beneath the tips of the lugs, as you can see, rather like a Tudor Black Bay Heritage or Tudor Black Bay 58. That's the kind of articulation we're looking at. That's the benefit, a snug fit with the end link in the oyster style bracelet. So the female pivoted end link articulates freely, doesn't feel stiff or kink. It's excellent. Does have some slight play, lateral, longitudinal, side to side, up and down play, but however it's not excessive, it is within tolerance, so it's good. Let's check the other side for continuity. Again, female pivoted end link articulates freely, doesn't feel stiff or kink, good articulation. The articulation is outstanding. It's the same amount of articulation one gets with a Tudor Black Bay Heritage or Black Bay 58 with female pivoted end links, because the end link in the oyster style bracelet can fully articulate beneath the tips of the lugs. That's exactly how the articulation of a female pivoted end link needs to be. Then you get the full benefits. For example, if you're a collector with a smaller wrist of 6 to 7 inches, you'll particularly enjoy this enhancement because the end link in the oyster style bracelet will pull snug to the wrist beneath the tips of the lugs. You won't have this gap underneath as per male end link pieces. Doesn't have excessive play, does have some slight lateral, longitudinal, side to side and up and down play, but it's within tolerances, so it's good. Very smooth, I really like it. With regards to the bracelet, it is finished to perfection. To put this into perspective, this is one of the greatest San Martin oyster style bracelets they have ever made. The refinement is there. Again, often a common problem with San Martin pieces is they are known for having a sharp edge on the top edge or the lower edge of the flanks of their oyster style bracelets, and the sharp edge on the flanks cuts into the wrist and it scratches it. So often collectors report this reduces the comfort level and the feel good factor of wearing the piece as a result. They've refined this one. This one is finished to outstanding levels. No sharp edge to the top edge or the lower edge of the oyster style bracelet. They've increased the chamfer on the edge of the top side and the underside of the flanks. That deletes the sharp edge, which they are known for, because often they have a really sharp, crisp edge on their oyster style bracelets. This one does not have a sharp edge, which cuts into the wrist. The luster is Rolex level quality. Again, what we're looking at with the brushed satin finishing, which is longitudinal, the luster is Rolex level. There's no discernible difference when looking at the brushed satin finishing on the top side and the underside to the oyster style bracelet and a Rolex oyster bracelet made from 9040 oyster steel. Visually it looks the same. The fine grain satin finishing is equal to Rolex level, or one could say Tudor level, used on the Black Bay Heritage or Black Bay 58 respectively. That's the kind of brushed satin finishing you're looking at. Absolutely gorgeous luster to it. Contrasts very well with the flawless mirror polishing to the flanks, and I'm pleased to see 1.6mm screw pins used in the flanks versus the cost-cutting measure of push pins. San Martin have produced some lower cost versions of the SN0111-G, for example, using push pins to reduce the production costs and therefore reduce the retail price point, because some collectors want to purchase San Martin pieces at a lower price point. But however, with this SN0111 SN0111-G-A. They have not used the cost-cutting measure of push pins. It uses 1.6mm screw pins, which are excellent. So, bracelet articulates freely. No stiff links, doesn't feel stiff or kink, doesn't feel sloppy. Nice tight tolerances in every single one of the push pins. Let's check the other side for continuity. Again, the links articulate freely, they don't feel stiff or kink. Fantastic. Doesn't feel sloppy, doesn't rattle, doesn't have excessive play. Now, I have sized this bracelet. I've removed one full link. So we've got 5 links on one side, 6 links on the other side, but it does come with 12 full links. They could further enhance the fit of this bracelet if they added an additional half link either side of the micro adjustment clasp. Excuse me. So if they added a half link on the 6 o'clock and the 12 o'clock side, that would better allow to get the perfect fits, because sometimes adding or subtracting one full link from the oyster style bracelet does not give the perfect fit. But however, we do have a micro adjustment clasp with ratcheting mechanism, and that does provide 10mm of adjustment. So in the absence of half links, one can get the perfect fit. Let's look at the micro adjustment clasp. So as I've detailed, beautiful luster to the body, and that complements the flawless brushed satin finishing to the flanks. Nice large mirror polish bevel, which marks the transition. Doesn't look too thick, it's not too bulky, it's not too long. So even if you have a shorter 6 to 7 inch wrist, this micro adjustment clasp is correctly proportioned. It's similar proportions to a Rolex glide lock clasp, and I like it. It's not too thick and bulky, and it is suitable for a 6 to 7 inch wrist, and it's also suitable in size for a 7 to 8 inch wrist respectively. 2 button push triggers are correctly proportioned, brushed satin finish, no sharp edges. They've also been chamfered with mirror polish chamfers to a good standard, which deletes the sharp edge around the button push. So 2 button push triggers are heavily sprung loaded, and it opens freely. Beautiful luster to the solid mill 316L grade stainless steel internals to the mill clasp, and no sharp edge to the top edge or the low edge of the flanks. The centre section doesn't have sharp corners, so it's been finished to perfection. Let's check the hinge pins. Left hand hinge pin articulates freely, doesn't feel stiff or kink, doesn't have excess play in any direction. Interference friction fit is good. Centre hinge pin articulates freely, doesn't feel stiff or kink. Again, doesn't have excessive play, which is good. Finally, let's check the right hand hinge pin. Articulates freely, doesn't feel stiff or kink, doesn't have excessive play. Perfect. All 3 hinge pins are an interference friction fit, as they should be. This is an example to other low-tier Chinese brands and other mid-tier Chinese brands of how to get solid milled micro adjustment class correct. The execution is perfect. Nice tight tolerances, build quality, quality control, finishing to the pins. The left hand hinge pin, the centre hinge pin and the right hand hinge pin all feel nice and tight. Excellent. This is a low tier piece costing €189, but the quality of the interference fit of the hinge pins is mid tier level, €500 to €5,000 price point interference fit. Perfect. This is the perfect micro adjustment clasp. So one of my favourite aspects is the 10mm of micro adjustment. So if you look at the underside, you can see there is a trigger which you depress, which is heavily sprung loaded, and they've engraved push. So you can depress it using your index finger or thumb, and you need to press it in hard. It's heavily sprung loaded. Now, that's not a negative, because when it's on wrist, you're not going to accidentally deploy it or extend it by wrist pressure against it. You've got to take it off the wrist, and you've got to really press in the trigger hard with your index finger or thumb in order to release the locking mechanism, and the ratcheting mechanism will then deploy. So 10mm of micro adjustment. Each click has a nice, heavy, loud, audible click. Really satisfying, feels robust, feels reliable, tolerances are good, build quality is good, machining, finishing. Nice heavy clicks. So you push it in hard, that releases the trigger, then it deploys 10mm, and in the absence of half links, that is adequate, because 10mm is effectively one full link added or subtracted with the micro adjustment. So I like the sound of it. Nice heavy loud audible clicks. I like the feeling of it. It feels robust. It feels heavier in terms of the ratcheting mechanism. The ratchets or the adjustments are heavier or wider than a Rolex glide lock, which has a finer adjustment, but this is very satisfying. I like the reliability of it. I like the feeling of the solid spring-loaded action to the trigger. You've really got to press it in hard with your thumb or index finger, so it's not going to accidentally deploy. And I really like when you push it in, the heavy feeling of it. It just feels so reliable and robust. Now, the thing to note is, just bear with me, I'll deploy it again and then test it again. The thing I like about it is, when it's fully deployed, it doesn't have excessive play, so it doesn't rattle. The tolerances are tight. Now, when you push it in fully, just bear with me, I'll deploy it fully and push it back in fully. So that's it for on full extension. Doesn't rattle. That's it on its minimum. Doesn't rattle. So the end links are a nice tight tolerance inside the body. There isn't too much play, but it deploys freely or smoothly when you press in the trigger, and it clicks back in smoothly. It's excellent. This is a very good micro adjustment clasp. I really like it. It feels good, works well, and the finishing of it is fantastic. If you look at the internals, they've done a very good job of machining the internals to the micro adjustment, and also they've done a very good job of slightly recessing the two flathead screws in the flanks. They don't sit proud. They're slightly recessed in the flanks. So the benefit of that is the flat screw heads do not feel sharp or rough because they don't project proud from the flanks, both on the left and the right hand flank. San Martin have slightly recessed the heads, and they've mirror polished the heads of the flathead screws to make them aesthetically pleasing and contrast with the brass satin finishing, but they're slightly recessed. Quality of the tolerances really is very good. This is a low tier piece, costing €189, but this is the kind of micro adjustment class one would expect with a mid tier piece costing €500 plus price point. Let's look at the case back. Solid 316L grade stainless steel case back. It's sterile as per a Rolex Submariner case back. Does visually look very similar in the looks and also proportions. So longitudinal brass satin finishing to the centre section as per a Rolex Submariner case back. The circumference is concentric CNC lathe tool machined, and we've also got coin edge teeth around the circumference which are finished to perfection. No sharp edges to the coin edge teeth. In profile they look very similar to a Rolex Submariner coin edge screw down case back. The screw down case back provides an effective hermetic seal to 300 metres of specification, which is strong specification. Now it does have a bubble back case back profile to it, but however that is acceptable because this is a Submariner or Submariner Date Homage. The other thing is it is powered by the Seiko NH35A. Therefore, it is a thick movement and it does need adequate clearance around the rotor. So it does need a deep bubble back case back versus a flat case back in order to provide adequate clearance for the rotor. The proportion is good, it's not too deep. And it does add some thickness because of course it is 300 metres, not 200 metres. It needs to be thick enough to provide 300 metres of hermetic seal. The profile of it does look similar to a Rolex Submariner or Submariner Date screw down case back, so I think it's good. It's a bubble back case back but not too thick, that's the point. The female pivoted end links are a nice tight fit to the head of the piece, and we have standard stainless steel spring bars rather than quick release spring bars, and as I've detailed, if I had to choose one word to describe this piece, it would be refinement, because if you look at the undercuts to the flanks, both on the crown guard side and also the other flank of the case, you can see there's a large chamfer to the edge of the case, and that is refined. San Martin have improved their case finishing because, as I've detailed, often that edge, the transition between the underside to the head of the piece and the flanks, has this sharp edge which feels sharp or cuts into the wrist or scratches the wrist, but this has a larger chamfer machined and polished on the edges of the flanks. That deletes the sharp edge that they're known for. Tips of the lugs are also deburred and chamfered to a better standard, so no sharp corners. This is outstanding case finishing. It's one of the best finished San Martin cases I have ever seen. Right, so let's check the bezel execution. 120 click unidirectional bezel as one would expect. So, although this is a Submariner or Submariner Date Homage, rather than using a Submariner style bezel, which is made from ceramic, they haven't just indexed the first 15 minutes with minute ticks. They've indexed the first 20 minutes with larger minute ticks, and then the other 60-minute ticks are smaller. I think this would look more aesthetically pleasing if they'd used the same size of minute ticks they've used in the first 20 minutes, if they continue those larger minute ticks all the way around as per a Rolex mil-sub bezel, but however this is subjective. Some collectors might like the larger minute ticks in the first 20 because it is slightly different to the Rolex Submariner and Submariner Date Serochrome bezel, which has minute ticks up to 15 minutes. This has minute ticks up to 20. The other thing is, it does look visually very similar to a Rolex Sea Dweller bezel insert, which is also made from Serochrome, because that does have the larger minute ticks in the first quarter or the first 15 minutes, and then it continues with smaller minute ticks around the rest of the 60-minute ticks. Visually it does look very good. They've done a very good job of engraving the ceramic and then infilling it with white paint. The Lume pip is very well proportioned and it's also very well done. The minute ticks are engraved with sharp high definition minute ticks, both the larger first 20-minute ticks and also the smaller other minute ticks. The Arabic numerals are correctly proportioned, high definition and crisp. The font is sharp, it's not too thick, and the quality of the inlaying with the paint is fantastic. This really is Rolex, Tudor or Omega level bezel insert finishing in terms of the quality of the mirror polishing to the black ceramic and in terms of the inlay of the white paint. The legibility is good, the contrast of the white paints both on the minute ticks and the Arabic numerals is excellent against the glossy black ceramic bezel insert. So let's check the execution. 120 click unidirectional bezel, as one would expect. Nice, loud, audible clicks. The sound of this bezel is fantastic. To put this into perspective, I actually prefer the sound of it to the bezel sound on my Rolex Submariner Date 16610 because the clicks are more loud, they're audible. And with a dive piece, I like that satisfying clicking sound. It's loud. You can hear every one of the 120 clicks. You can hear the click spring beneath the bezel engaging with every single one of the 120 grooves in the underside of the stainless steel bezel. Sounds good, feels good. Feels even all the way through the 360 degrees, doesn't get tighter or looser, so it feels nice and smooth. Doesn't feel rough or gritty, it feels refined. And again, if I had to choose one word to describe this piece, it would be refinement, because this is peak San Martin. We're looking at one of the very best San Martin pieces ever made. They've got everything about this correct. Correct decision after correct decision. Bezel execution on this is fantastic. It is as good or better than the very best of San Martin bezel execution used on the SN0111-G or the SN004-G or SN006-G. They have some of the best bezel actions San Martin have ever made because they got the balance correct between it being too tight or too loose. The sound of it, the feeling of it on those pieces was fantastic. This is also one of their heavy hitter pieces with fantastic bezel execution. So, feels even all the way through the 360 degrees, doesn't get tighter or looser. No lateral side-side play whatsoever, no back play whatsoever. So in terms of resistance, it's medium firm. Feels similar to the resistance on a Seiko 5KX, which you may be familiar with. Also feels very similar to the bezel execution on a San Martin SN0111-G, which is fantastic. I absolutely love the sound of it and the feeling of it. Nice and tight, but not too heavy. You can get good purchase on the scalloped bezel. Feels grippy and tactile. You can get good purchase with your index finger and thumb, but doesn't dig into the skin. So the teeth are deburred very well. They're not sharp, but grippy. So let's just check the alignments. One more click. Perfect. The Lume pip and triangle perfectly aligned with the 12 o'clock index on the dial and the 60-minute tick on the chaptering. So what we're looking at here is an example to other low-tier Chinese brands and mid-tier Chinese brands of how to get the perfect bezel execution. Feels even all the way through the 360 degrees, no lateral side-side play, no back play, perfect alignment. This is 10 out of 10. They could not improve upon this. I actually prefer the sound of this bezel and the feeling of it to my Rolex Submariner Date bezel execution. It feels heavy, it feels reliable, robust. I like the clicking feeling. It feels like a really reliable, solid bezel execution. I like the medium resistance to it. Not too light or too tight. It's perfect. Let's test this screw down crown execution. Solid 316L grade stainless steel crown, coin edge finished. Nice large chamfer which deletes the sharp tips to the coin edge teeth. The quality of the finishing to this crown is fantastic. This is one of the best quality crowns San Martin have made. Mirror polished San Martin hex emblem which is embossed and then matte bead blasted background to it. Now, I'll explain something you won't be aware of. Lao Jiaming, the owner of San Martin, purchases their screw down crowns from a factory in bulk. In order to reduce the price per piece of the crowns, he purchased batches of 10,000 crowns because these crowns are used on a plethora of San Martin watches. Now, usually with low-tier Chinese brands, they typically have a quality control rejection rate of 3 out of 10. So what that means is they will accept 7 out of 10 crowns in a batch. Only 3 out of 10 will be rejected, and therefore you get QC defects. For example, you'll get screw-down crowns that have sharp teeth on the coin edge teeth. They have sharp embossing or engraving, so they feel rough. And also the threads, the internal thread will feel rough or gritty. When they have that typical low-tier rejection rate, they only reject 3 out of 10. They only accept 7 out of 10, which is a lot. With San Martin, they have a very strict quality control tolerance on the crowns. So Lau Jiaming, the owner of San Martin, will purchase a batch of 10,000 screw down crowns, which are made for San Martin, but they will only accept 3 out of 10 of those crowns. They reject 7 out of 10, which is a massive amount of rejection. The quality is therefore high, the quality control is higher because only 3 out of 10 pass quality control inspection. So this crown is one of 3 out of 10 crowns which have been accepted, 7 out of 10 were rejected. This is the kind of rejection rate one sees on high tier pieces costing in excess of 10,000 euro plus price point, or alternatively mid-tier pieces costing 500 to 5,000 euro price point. One doesn't get a 3 out of 10 acceptance rate typically in the low tier, and that's why you often get rough or gritty screw down crowns, but you don't get it on San Martin pieces such as this. We're looking at peak San Martin here, the very best. So silky smooth. This is sublime screw down crown execution. In terms of how it feels similar to a Rolex, Tudor or Omega screw down crown used on the Submariner, or alternatively the Black Bay, or alternatively the Seamaster. That's the kind of smoothness, and that's what you get with 3 out of 10 rejection rate. In other words, you accept 3 crowns, reject 7 out of a batch of 10. And although San Martin are purchasing 10,000 crowns per batch, which is an enormous number in order to reduce the wholesale price per piece, their quality control, they're maintaining it, it's high. Silky smooth, minimal number of turns required to unscrew it. So when it's unscrewed, we're now in the manual wind position, so I can manually wind the Seiko NH35A automatic to its maximum 40 hours. Feels nice and smooth. I like the light resistance to it. Now it feels slightly heavier than a Miyota 8000 series to manually wind. One can feel the tension in the mainspring building up quicker. So I like the feeling of it. It feels reliable, robust. It's an absolute pleasure to manually wind. Doesn't feel rough or gritty. It feels smooth. And I like the feeling of the tension gradually building up to its maximum 40 hours. Putting it out to the first click position is the quick set date complication. So if you look at the date window, you can see the quick set date advances with nice positive clicks. Good solid clicks is a characteristic I really like about the NH35A and the NH38A respectively. The quickset complication has a nice heavy click. You can feel the clicks, you can also hear the audible clicks. So the date clicks over with a more solid click than Miyota 8000 series such as the 8215, and I like the indexing. As I've detailed, the alignment is correct. Both the singles and the double Arabic numerals align correctly in the date window. They're not too far to the left or the right of the framed date window, and they're not too high or too low. So sharp, high definition, crisp font. The font isn't too thick or blurry, and in the absence of a Cyclops magnifier, the legibility is still good. The black Arabic numerals contrast very well with the white date wheel. So proportions of the Arabic numerals, both the singles and doubles, are correct. Feels good to set the date. Putting it out to the second click position hacks the movement. So if you look at the second hand, you can see it's now stopped dead. Therefore, it's possible to set the time precisely to the second with a caliber NH35A. Light resistance to the gearing meshes very well. Feels smooth, both clockwise and anti-clockwise when you cycle through the 12 hours to set the time. And I like the feeling of it. It feels reliable and robust, but it doesn't have a lot of friction in it because it has 24 joules. So it feels very smooth to set the time. Minimal backplay. When you rotate the coin edge crown clockwise and anti-clockwise, there's an almost immediate response. This is something I really like about the NH35A. The reliability of it feels very robust, feels durable because we don't have a lot of slack. As per Miyota 8215, for example, you don't have to rotate the crown an excess amount in order to take up the slack. Some slack or some backplay is necessary. If it didn't have that, when you push in the crown, it would make the minute hand jump, and therefore the time wouldn't be precise. But by having the slight backplay in the gearing, it allows the crown to be pushed back in without the second hand jumping, so there is a necessity for it. Pushing it back in, it's got a nice positive click, and that restarts the movement. You can see the second hand begins to sweep around the dial once again at the characteristic 3 Hz sweep of the NH35A because it runs at 21,600 vibrations per hour. Now, subjectively, one could be critical of that because I personally prefer movements, automatics, to run at 4 Hz because the second hand with a 4 Hz sweep has a smoother sweep. It doesn't stutter or judder around the dial. It's a characteristic of the NH35A and the NH38A respectively. They run at 3 Hz and therefore the second hand stutters or judders around the dial. That's something you just have to live with. 3 Hz sweeps. Not as smooth, not as aesthetically pleasing as a 4 Hz, but subjectively it's not detrimental because for the majority of collectors they don't mind the stutter or judder of a 3 Hz sweep of an NH35A. So let's test screwing the crown back down. Instant thread pickup. There's a perfect pickup or interface between the internal thread of the stainless steel crown and the external thread of the stainless steel crown tube. So quality control, build quality, tolerances and machining of the screw down crown is fantastic. This is sublime screw down crown execution, silky smooth. It really does feel similar in quality to a Rolex, Tudor or Omega screw down crown. This is a low-tier piece costing €189. It is an example to other low-tier Chinese brands of how to get a 300-metre water-resistant screw-down crown done to perfection. They could not improve upon this. It's fantastic, silky smooth screw-down crown execution. Right, so I'll give you a wrist shot and you can see how it fits on my 8-inch wrist. Now, I have sized this bracelet. I have removed one full link from the 6 o'clock side. This comes with 6 full links on the 6 o'clock side, 6 full links on the 12 o'clock side, so 12 full links in total. I've now got 5 and 6, but the clasp does sit centrally on the wrist. 10mm on micro adjustment. Now, this is on its absolute minimum, so 10mm shorter, and I can still just slide an index finger beneath the bracelet and micro adjustment clasp at all times. So this will fit up to a maximum 9-inch wrist with all the links in the oyster style bracelet. I'm just going to deploy it fully because I want to show you how the fit is with the micro adjustment clasp fully deployed, and there you will see it at its absolute maximum. Right, so that's fully deployed. We're now on the maximum 10mm of adjustment with one full link removed, and you can see I can slide an index finger beneath braces and clasp. So even with one link removed and the micro adjustment on its maximum, this fits my 8-inch wrist. It's good because if you're a collector with a larger wrist of 8 inches plus, there are enough links. There are 12 full links in the oyster style bracelet, so you can size it to fit up to even a 9-inch wrist with all the links and the micro adjustment clasp on its maximum. This can be sized down to a minimum 6-inch wrist size. There are enough removable links on the 6 o'clock and the 12 o'clock side to reduce it down to a minimum 6-inch wrist size up to a maximum 9-inch wrist size. So a huge amount of variation, 6 to 9 inches respectively. For the majority of collectors, there'll be no difficulty whatsoever. If you have a 6 to 7.5-inch wrist, the micro adjustment clasp gives enough adjustment. There are enough removable links, both on the 6 and the 12. The only thing they could do to enhance it is to add a half link on the 6 and a half link on the 12 o'clock side, as I've detailed. So bear in mind, this is with the bracelet sized correctly to fit my 8-inch wrist. Feel good factor of this piece is 10 out of 10. Comfort level is 10 out of 10. It feels very well balanced. It does have heft, but it's a 40mm on a solid oyster style bracelet and also solid micro adjustment clasp, which does add some heft. So with all the links in the oyster style bracelet, the heft is 156 grams, so slightly above the sweet spot. I often refer to the perfect heft of a piece for a 40mm in my previous reviews as 150 grams because 150 grams gives a nice feeling of quality and wrist presence on wrist without feeling top heavy or uncomfortable. So for example, if you wear this piece for long periods of time, such as 8 to 12 hours per day, 150 grams gives you a feeling of heft, gives you a feeling of quality on wrist without feeling top heavy and uncomfortable if you wear it for 8 to 12 hours. So needless to say, if you remove 3 or 4 links from the oyster style bracelet, that will reduce the heft of this piece below 150 grams, below the sweet spot. Even now, with one link removed, it's still 152 grams, so it's just 2 grams above the sweet spot. Feels balanced, doesn't feel top heavy. Now, the thing I like about this piece is it has the perfection personified taper. I often refer to this because it is the industry standard for good reason. On a 39, 40 or 41 head of the piece, 20 to 16 is the perfect taper for an oyster style bracelet or a Jubilee style bracelet respectively. You can see why it's the industry standard for good reason. Visually, it is the ultimate. Perfection personified taper. 20 to 16. Looks good, feels good. Doesn't have too much meat on the bracelet, so it doesn't feel heavy, but the taper looks perfect for a 40mm head of the piece. 20mm lug width is correct. Female pivoted end links are correct. Now, as I've detailed, look at the benefits. This is the benefit of female pivoted end links versus male end links as used on the Submariner and Submariner Date, which this is an homage to. Because had they used male end links, that would have meant the end of the oyster style link in the bracelet wouldn't be able to articulate down and pull snug to the wrist. We'd have a gap like so. But the female pivoted end link allows the end link in the oyster style bracelet to pivot, as you can see, so the end link in the Oyster Style bracelet can move below the tips of the lugs, snug to the wrist. This applies regardless of whether you have a 6 to 7 inch wrist or a 7 to 8 inch wrist respectively. Even on my large 8 inch wrist, I'm getting the benefit of that snug fit and the articulation, and it doesn't feel stiff or kink, it articulates freely. It's fantastic, they do it very well. Lug to lug measurement is close to perfection. 48mm is the perfect lug to lug, as I've detailed, because that will fit you regardless of whether you have a 6 to 7 inch wrist or a 7 to 8 inch wrist respectively. So this is a fraction below the perfect lug to lug measurement of 48. It's 47.6, so it's only 0.4mm too short to be perfect at 48. That is acceptable. You can see the benefits. On my large 8 inch wrist, the 48 lug to lug, well, 47.6 lug to lug is close to perfection. Case feels very good. The proportions of this head of the piece, 40 by 47.6, are fantastic, with a 20mm lug width and the perfection personified 20 to 16 taper. Clasp doesn't look or feel too bulky. It is large, it's similar in proportions to a Rolex Glide Lock, but it doesn't sit too proud from the wrist. However, if you're a collector with a smaller wrist of 6 to 7 inches, you may find it slightly too long. It does fit a larger 7 to 8 inch wrist better due to the length. For example, if you have a 6 to 7 inch wrist, you may find it slightly too long with some slight overhang, which causes the end links in the clasp to have a gap beneath the end link on the 6 o'clock and the 12 o'clock side. On a larger 7 to 8 inch wrist, it's not as noticeable, the gap, but on a smaller wrist you may find the clasp to be too long. That's something to bear in mind if you have a 6 to 7 inch wrist. But for the majority of collectors, for example with a 7 to 7.5 inch wrist, clasp is correctly proportioned. It's not too long, has a good curvature to it, and it's not too wide. Visually it looks fantastic, beautiful luster, and I like the contrast of the applied San Martin hex emblem. 2 button push triggers are correctly proportioned, and I like the large bevel which is machined to mark the transition. It's just visually looks good, feels comfortable, no sharp edges to the undercuts, doesn't dig into the wrist, doesn't have sharp corners, doesn't have a sharp top edge or low edge. So looks good, feels good. Feel good factor of this piece is 10 out of 10. Comfort level is 10 out of 10. Now, above all else, the one thing I like about this piece more than anything is the low profile to the double dome sapphire crystal. What we're looking at here is correct decision after correct decision, because had San Martin, as so many low-tier Chinese brands do, had they used a box top hat crystal to give it a vintage aesthetic, that would have added 2mm of thickness to the piece, and it would have been too tall and top heavy, because it wouldn't be 13.4. If it had a box top hat style crystal, it would be 2mm plus, it would be 15.4, which of course is far too tall. At 13.4, it's just 0.4mm above the sweet spot. I often refer to 13mm as the perfect thickness, 13 or below, because anything below 13mm will easily slip underneath a shirt cuff if you wear business shirts. So at 13.4, it's only 0.4mm taller. It's acceptable. The low profile to the double dome sapphire crystal is absolutely gorgeous. AR coating works well, but I like the way the bevel on the edge of the sapphire crystal slightly projects above the bevel of the bezel insert, which is ceramic. So nice glossy finish to the bevel on the ceramic bezel insert, and then we've got this very low profile, low dome to the double dome sapphire crystal, but it still has a slight bevel on the edge of the crystal which catches the light. So visually it looks very aesthetically pleasing. They've made the correct decision. They could have reduced it by 0.4mm had they used a flat sapphire crystal as per Rolex Submariner, but they didn't. They've added some interest, and also what they've done here is they've got the correct balance between this being an homage to the Submariner or Submariner date and it not being a direct copy or clone. For example, they could have directly copied the Cerachrome bezel and had 15-minute ticks in the first quarter. They could have simply used the flat sapphire crystal with 2.5 times magnification, as per the SN0111-G, which is a Submariner date homage. They've already done that. But they haven't. They've refined this piece and come up with a balance between this being an homage to the Submariner date and not a direct copy or clone, as per the SN0111-G, which is very close to it. So the minute ticks around the bezel add some interest to it. They've deleted the Cyclops magnifier, and you have this double dome sapphire crystal versus a flat sapphire crystal as per the SN0111-G. So slightly different to the Submariner date and slightly different to the homage of it, which is the SN0111-G. I like it. The balance is correct. Double dome sapphire crystal is good, and the legibility of the date complication is still good enough without the Cyclops magnifier magnifying it. I like that it's slightly different to the Submariner dates, and I like that it's slightly different to the SN17G, which is the Submariner date homage. It's good. So comfort level is excellent, feel good factor is excellent, no sharp edges to the undercuts of the flanks, and no sharp edges to the top edge and the lower edge of the flanks of the bracelet. So it doesn't have the typical QC issues or the sharp edges that one often gets with other San Martin pieces. Right, so let's do a Lume test and we'll see how the Lume performs when it's charged up to the absolute maximum. So as always, I'm going to use my 100 UV LED torch to charge it up to the absolute peak. Right, so that's now fully charged, and as you can see, it has not disappointed. What we're looking at here is stellar performance. Again, this is an example to other low-tier Chinese brands and mid-tier Chinese brands of how to get superluminova application correct. We're clearly looking at 5 to 6 layers on the Lume pip, on the ceramic bezel insert, 5 to 6 layers on the applied indices, and 5 to 6 layers on the Mercedes handset. In daylight, perfect colour tone match between the Lume pip, the dial and the hands. They don't look whiter or creamer, they are white in all three places. Bezel, dial and hands, as they should be. In the dark, there's also a perfect colour tone match between the bezel, dial and hands. The BGW9 has the same blue tone. Doesn't look lighter or darker blue on the bezel, dial or hands, it's the same perfect blue tone. The exciter is very potent. You can see the exciter is performing to stellar performance levels. 5 to 6 layers is the industry standard for good reason. It is optimum performance. And it's good to see that unlike so many low-tier Chinese brands, San Martin have not cut any production costs in order to maximise profit margin per piece by only applying 2 to 3 layers of BGW9 or 5 to 6 or 3 to 4 layers on the Lume pip or dial or handset. We're looking at 5 to 6 in all three places, as we should be looking at. The Lume pip, the applied indices and the handset all have stellar performance. You can see it's not fading whatsoever. To put this into perspective, it is similar quality level to Rolex Chrome Light, or similar quality level to Seiko Lumebrights, which are outstanding. They give stellar performance. And the BGW9 has a beautiful blue tone to it. I wouldn't change anything about it. The performance is strong, it's not fading quickly, and the application is even on the Lume pip, the applied indices and the Mercedes hands. 5 to 6 layers throughout. It's an example to other low tier and mid tier Chinese brands of how to get it right. So, stellar performance, fantastic, really good BGW9. So, let's discuss the movement used. You'll all be familiar with the Seiko Caliber NH35A automatic. It's made by Seiko in 2 plants in Malaysia and Japan respectively. There's no quality control, build quality, materials or finishing differences between the Japanese or Malaysian made versions of the NH35A. They're made to the same quality control standards. San Martin are using the Malaysian version of the NH35A, which is equal to the Japanese version. The NH35A has been in service since 2011, so at this stage in 2025 it's a reliable, well-proven workhorse Malaysian caliber. It has 24 joules, it runs at 21,600 vibrations per hour and a frequency of 3 Hz. It has hand winding and hacking, which is used for complications, and a quick set date complication, which, as I've demonstrated, work very well. 40-hour power reserve is perfectly acceptable. The stated accuracy of the NH35A is -20 to +40 seconds per day, so rather wide accuracy range. However, I'm pleased to report that San Martin are doing an excellent job of regulating the NH35As they're using. This one is running consistently at +2 seconds per day. +2 is actually within chronometer grade accuracy of -4 to +6. +2 is well within the stated accuracy of -20 to +40 seconds per day. So this clearly indicates that San Martin are regulating the NH35As they're using in 5 positions to attain chronometer accuracy. +2 is the very best of accuracy for an NH35A. It's fantastic. There are no negatives to the NH35A whatsoever. It's reliable, well proven, it's a workhorse Malaysian made caliber, and it's been in service since 2011, so it's unquestionably reliable. The reliability has been well proven from 2011 to 2025. No reliability issues whatsoever. The hand winding, hacking work well, quick set complication works well. Subjectively, the only negative one could say is the second hand runs at 3 Hz sweep, so it stutters or judders versus the 4 Hz sweep of a movement running at 28,800 vibrations per hour, as per Miyota 9000 series, such as the 9015 or the 9039 respectively. But that's the only negative, and it is subjective, because for the majority of collectors, they don't mind the stutter or judder of the 3 Hz sweep. It's an excellent movement, and it is the correct choice at this price point in the low tier. €189, one expects the NH35A with a date complication. So I like everything about it. So last I'll summarise the piece. What do I think of it overall? Well, when I'm considering reviewing a watch on my channel, the watch meet two criteria. It should be both excellent quality and excellent value at the respective price point. So €189, low tier price point piece. Yes, this is unquestionably excellent quality, and yes, it is unquestionably excellent value at €189. As I've said before, what you're looking at here is peak San Martin, the very best of San Martin. This is one of the greatest San Martin pieces they have ever made. I have reviewed a plethora of San Martin watches at all price points. This is one of the very best. They've refined this piece. If I had to choose one word, refinement would be the word, because some San Martin pieces have QC issues or defects. They're very common. The sharp edge to the undercuts to the flanks, and the sharp edge to the top edge and the low edge of the oyster style bracelets. These are the negatives. This does not have those negatives because they've refined it. Larger chamfer on the edge of the case. The undercut has been deburred and chamfered. The flanks to the flanks to the oyster style bracelet have been deburred and chamfered very well, so we don't have those sharp edges. Therefore, the comfort level and the feel-good factor has been enhanced. This is stellar comfort level and stellar feel-good factor. I'm going to declare it excellent quality and excellent value at €189. This is the best San Martin money can buy at €189. It is better quality, better finishing, better quality control, better refinement than an SN0111-G. The bezel execution is the best San Martin bezel execution I've experienced. The screw down crown is sublime. No negatives to this whatsoever. It's the perfect San Martin Submariner Homage. If I had to choose between this piece and the SN0111-G, I would choose this piece. I like this piece so much I've decided to add it to my own personal collection, and that really is the very highest compliment I can pay a watch. I'm going to declare it a champagne watch for lemonade money. I hope you've enjoyed my review of the San Martin SN0111-G-A. Please feel free to post your own comments below the video. Thank you for watching.